Cunningham didn't just spark a conversation, she lit a fuse. Her boldness signaled that the WNBA could no longer control its stars through intimidation or secrecy. The league was now facing a player-driven reckoning, one that threatened to reshape power dynamics from the inside out. If Sophie Cunningham lit the spark, Lexi Hull poured gasoline on the fire. Just 24 hours after Cunningham's explosive press conference, Hull, Caitlin Clark's teammate with the Indiana Fever, stepped to the microphone and delivered a statement that sent chills through every locker room in the WNBA. If Caitlin Clark can be treated like this, what do you think they'll do to the rest of us? Those words transformed a controversy centered on one rookie into a league-wide crisis. Hull didn't just defend Clark, she exposed a systemic issue, a culture in which even the most talented, most marketable players are vulnerable to political sidelining. Her statement wasn't born of panic or personal vendetta. It was a measured warning, a precise acknowledgement of the stakes for every athlete in the league. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Fans took to social media en masse, echoing Hull's message, while journalists and analysts amplified her words across national broadcasts. No longer could executives dismiss Clark's benching as an isolated incident. Hull had framed it as a problem that could affect every player, rookie or veteran, at any time. The league's internal control mechanisms were under scrutiny, and the optics were disastrous. Beyond the public eye, Hull's intervention ignited conversations inside locker rooms across the country. Younger players who had previously felt powerless now saw an example of courage. Veterans who had stayed quiet for fear of reprisal began questioning whether compliance was truly protecting them. Suddenly, the WNBA's culture of silent obedience was being challenged openly, creating ideological fractures between those willing to confront leadership and those wary of retaliation. Hull's message also reframed the narrative for fans and sponsors. Clark was no longer simply a victim of mismanagement, she had become the emblem of a larger struggle: fairness, transparency, and respect in the league. Fans who had followed Clark's rise felt personally invested, realizing that the WNBA's decisions could impact not only her career, but the integrity of the league itself. This was more than a statement. It was a warning shot. Hull made it clear that the consequences of ignoring Clark's treatment would ripple far beyond a single game, a single season, or a single player. The league was no longer simply managing basketball operations, it was now confronting the demands of a player-driven movement that refused to be silenced. Behind the headlines and social media frenzy, a more insidious development was unfolding: a deep divide within WNBA locker rooms. What started as whispers over Caitlin Clark's benching quickly escalated into a broader conversation about power, loyalty, and the league's internal culture. Players were being forced to take sides, either align with the rising movement for accountability or remain silent and risk being seen as complicit. For years, the WNBA has relied on a culture of compliance. Veterans warned rookies to know their place. Players were expected to smile for the cameras, follow scripted narratives, and keep grievances behind closed doors. Challenging the league's authority was considered career suicide, but Cunningham and Hull broke that mold. They spoke publicly, unapologetically, and their voices were heard loud and clear. Younger players, inspired by this courage, began asking questions in team meetings, scrutinizing coaching decisions, and pushing back against favoritism and bias that had long been tolerated. They were energized by the notion that performance and leadership should be valued above compliance. Conversely, some older players remained cautious, worried that speaking out could provoke retaliation or destabilize team dynamics. This tension created a visible shift. Locker rooms that were once unified around basketball were now ideologically divided. The divide illustrates something crucial. This is about more than one player or one controversial decision. It is a cultural shift within the league, one in which athletes are claiming agency over their careers and demanding transparency from leadership. The old model of silent obedience, which maintained order in the past, now appears outdated, oppressive, and unsustainable. And while the league may hope that internal fractures will weaken the movement, Cunningham and Hull's defiance has lit a fuse that cannot easily be extinguished. The players realize that silence protects those in power, while unity empowers change. This isn't simply a dispute over minutes or strategy, it's a battle over respect, fairness, and the very structure of the league. The locker room has transformed from a place of camaraderie into a battlefield where ideologies clash and the future of the WNBA hangs in the balance. The outcome of this internal struggle will determine not just Caitlin Clark's trajectory, but the league's ability to retain credibility, talent, and fan loyalty in an era where athletes refuse to be silenced. When the WNBA finally broke its silence on Caitlin Clark's sudden benching, fans expected clarity. What they received was the exact opposite, a statement so vague and dismissive it barely qualified as an explanation. The league simply called it a rotational decision. No mention of Clark, no acknowledgement of the controversy, No recognition of the thousands of fans who had bought tickets specifically to see her perform. Just a hollow phrase meant to pacify a growing storm. The reaction was swift and brutal. Social media erupted with outrage. Analysts tore into the statement, pointing out that no rookie averaging Clark's production and drawing this level of attention had ever been sidelined for such nebulous reasons. Casual fans, who had tuned in for the excitement she brought, could immediately see the disconnect. The WNBA's response wasn't an explanation, it was damage control gone wrong. By refusing to address the situation honestly, the league inadvertently confirmed suspicions that something deeper was at play. Every canned response, every dodged question, made it appear as though the organization was scrambling to cover its tracks. The optics were disastrous, undermining trust with fans, players, and sponsors alike. What should have been a moment to reinforce confidence in the league instead became a credibility crisis. Transparency is key to sustaining any professional sport. Fans invest emotionally, financially, and socially in their favorite players. By benching Clark without explanation and then issuing a vague, seemingly indifferent statement, the league betrayed not just her, but the fans who had put their trust in the WNBA. Ticket sales, TV ratings, merchandise, all the metrics driven by her presence were being undermined by silence. The consequences extend beyond this season. When the governing body of a league cannot account for its actions, it signals to players and fans alike that authority trumps talent and control outweighs fairness. Clark's benching was no longer just an internal personnel matter. It became a symbol of mismanagement and disregard for both athletes and the communities that support them. In short, the WNBA's response didn't calm the controversy, it inflamed it. By treating the situation as a minor issue rather than acknowledging its systemic implications, the league fanned the flames of fan frustration and player dissatisfaction, turning a singular incident into a full-blown crisis of trust and credibility. If there was ever any doubt that this was more than a Caitlin Clark issue, it vanished the moment Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull appeared side by side. Two players from different teams, different backgrounds, and different stages of their careers united by one common belief. The league had crossed a line. Cunningham had already ignited the conversation with her fiery presser, calling out the fear-driven decision to sideline Clark. Hull followed, delivering a razor-sharp warning that extended the implications to all players. If Caitlin Clark can be treated like this, what do you think they'll do to the rest of us? When they stood together, shoulder to shoulder, the message was louder than any individual statement. This wasn't just frustration, this was solidarity. The symbolism of their unity cannot be overstated. For years, WNBA players had been siloed, discouraged from organizing outside of collective bargaining. By coming forward together, Cunningham and Hull shattered that divide. They made it clear that silence was no longer an option, that protecting oneself at the expense of others would no longer be tolerated, and that standing up for fairness was both necessary and powerful. Their declaration that no player is safe struck a nerve because it tapped into a universal truth. Every player, rookie or veteran, knows how fragile their place in the league can be. One injury, one miscommunication, one unexplained rotational decision, and a career can vanish overnight. Clark's treatment was simply the most visible example, but Cunningham and Hull forced the league and fans to recognize it as systemic. Fans quickly rallied behind their message. Social media erupted with hashtags of support. Former players praised the courage it took to break decades of silence. Even casual viewers, many of whom had been drawn to the league primarily by Clark, understood the historic weight of two athletes putting their reputations on the line. Fans of the WNBA, prepare yourselves, because what you're about to hear could redefine the league's entire narrative. Caitlin Clark is not just a rookie, she's a phenomenon. From the moment she stepped onto the professional stage, she shattered records, drew sellout crowds, and single-handedly attracted millions of new eyes to women's basketball. Families plan their schedules around her games. Networks scramble for broadcast rights. Merchandise flies off the shelves the moment her name hits a scoreboard. In every measurable way, Clark has done what no other player has achieved in league history. She made the WNBA must-watch television. And yet, despite this unparalleled impact, the league has failed her and failed themselves. Instead of building campaigns around her, elevating her into a household name like Michael Jordan or LeBron James, the WNBA treated her as just another player. They buried their most powerful marketing asset. Even worse, they benched her at the very height of her popularity, leaving fans bewildered and furious. The consequences are immediate and undeniable. Fans feel betrayed, networks question the league's judgment, sponsors hesitate. What should have been a golden opportunity to redefine the league's visibility has instead become a glaring misstep. Clark's rise was a chance to usher the WNBA into a new era of prominence, and instead, executives let it slip through their fingers. To understand the gravity, picture this: a rookie averaging over 20 points and nearly 8 assists per game, transforming a struggling Indiana Fever team into a playoff contender, suddenly disappears from the starting lineup. No injury, no sickness, no fatigue, just silence. Coaches and league executives offer no explanation. Casual fans sense something is wrong, and the numbers only amplify the absurdity. Clark was not just contributing, she was carrying her team. Yet the league decided to sit her. This isn't load management, rotational strategy, or any excuse that would pass scrutiny even in a high school gym. Clark is 22, physically in her prime, dominating both on offense and defense. And the fans? They are left with nothing, no answers, no transparency, just the empty feeling of betrayal. This is not a minor miscalculation. This is the WNBA's single biggest self-inflicted crisis in years, and it centers entirely on the mishandling of Caitlin Clark, the player who could have been their ticket to national relevance, global attention, and long-term growth. Now, let's talk about the moment that ignited a firestorm: Caitlin Clark's sudden and inexplicable benching. This wasn't a minor lineup tweak or a routine rest day. This was a rookie, arguably the hottest property in women's basketball, being removed from the game at the peak of her influence, and the reasons given were, at best, vague. Rotational decision, the league said. That's it. No explanation. No acknowledgement of the fans, the records, or the unprecedented attention she had brought to the WNBA. Fans didn't just notice they were outraged. Parents had brought their children to see history being made. Ticket holders had traveled across states just to witness a generational talent in action. Broadcast schedules were arranged around her games, and yet, when they arrived, the star attraction was absent, replaced by a hollow promise of strategy. Analysts quickly pointed out the absurdity. No healthy rookie producing Clark's numbers over 20 points and nearly 8 assists per game, carrying her team in multiple advanced metrics, has ever been benched in any major professional sport without a valid reason. Not the NBA, NFL, MLB, or NHL. Not ever. And the numbers tell the story even louder. Clark wasn't just scoring points, she was generating wins. Leading her team in scoring, assists, and even defensive contributions, she was performing at a level no first-year player should be expected to achieve. Her efficiency ratings rivaled established MVP candidates. Her usage rate demonstrated the team's reliance on her skill. And despite all of this, the league and coaching staff chose to remove her from the court. The implications go far beyond one game. By sidelining Clark without transparency, the WNBA not only risked alienating its most engaged fans, but also sent a chilling message to the league's players. No matter how much you perform, your career could be subject to politics, personal agendas, or internal power struggles. That decision didn't just affect one rookie, it undermined trust in the entire league. In short, Clark's benching wasn't a minor incident. It was a public spectacle of mismanagement, an affront to fans, and a cautionary tale that the league's handling of its biggest asset might be its undoing. Caitlin Clark had become more than a player. She was the pulse of the WNBA, and yet the league chose to ignore it. Here's where the story takes a darker turn. Caitlin Clark's benching wasn't about basketball. It wasn't about rest, rotation, or strategy. Sources close to the Indiana Fever and the WNBA suggest that Clark's removal was tied to internal politics and power dynamics, a young superstar challenging the status quo and executives who weren't prepared to be questioned. According to insiders, Clark had reportedly raised concerns about the league's outdated marketing strategies. She pushed for campaigns that highlighted real player personalities, authentic stories, and fan engagement, instead of the same cookie-cutter promotions that had failed to capture new audiences. In essence, Clark was advocating for the WNBA's growth, using the platform she had worked tirelessly to elevate. And while her intentions were visionary, the league reportedly saw it as a challenge to their authority. The timing is suspicious, to say the least. Within 48 hours of Clark speaking up, her minutes were reduced. Within 72 hours, she was benched entirely. No official statements acknowledged any connection, but the pattern was clear enough for fans and analysts to connect the dots. When a rookie dares to speak truth to power and immediately faces repercussions, the narrative is unmistakable. Influence and talent can be punished if it disrupts internal control. Fans had purchased tickets, tuned into broadcasts, and invested emotionally in Clark's rise. She was filling arenas and creating a national conversation around the league. Yet, instead of being celebrated as a solution, she was treated like a problem to manage. Her removal wasn't just a slight against her, it was a statement to the players, the fans, and the public. Control is valued above performance, loyalty above innovation. And make no mistake, this isn't about diva behavior, this is leadership. Clark was acting in the league's best interest, proposing strategies that could elevate the sport and create a lasting legacy. The WNBA's decision to bench her under these circumstances sends a chilling message. Even the brightest stars aren't immune to suppression. Fans began to realize something essential. This wasn't a basketball controversy, this was a governance crisis. The very player who could have led the WNBA into a new era of relevance was being silenced. And as the whispers spread, it became increasingly clear that the league's credibility, its connection with fans, and its long-term future were all at stake. And then came Sophie Cunningham. The Phoenix Mercury veteran didn't hold back. In a post-game press conference that felt more like a courtroom cross-examination than a routine media appearance, Cunningham dropped a line that reverberated across the basketball world. "You don't sideline your biggest star unless you're scared of her power." Those words cut deeper than any statistic or press release could. In a single sentence, Cunningham exposed the underlying truth fans had been whispering about. Caitlin Clark's benching wasn't about strategy, performance, or fatigue. It was about fear. Fear that a rising star could upset the league's carefully maintained hierarchy. Fear that popularity and influence might challenge the comfort zones of executives who have dictated the narrative of women's basketball for decades. Cunningham's statement wasn't reckless or emotional. It was calculated, sharp, and undeniable. She understood the league's politics and the unspoken rules players had long been expected to follow. Smile for the cameras, toe the line, and never question authority. By breaking that silence, she became a voice for not just Clark, but for every player who had felt sidelined or silenced for reasons beyond basketball. The ripple effect was immediate. Analysts replayed her words across every sports network. Fans took to social media to amplify the message, quoting her like a mantra. Executives who had hoped this controversy would fade suddenly realized they were losing control of the narrative. Cunningham had made it clear. The league was no longer in the driver's seat when it came to how its players were perceived and treated. And perhaps the most profound impact was the solidarity it represented. For too long, players had been expected to remain silent, but Cunningham's defiance showed that veterans, not just rookies, were willing to challenge the system. She illuminated the hypocrisy, the fear-driven decision-making, and the disconnect between league leadership and the people who make it watchable. Inside locker rooms, the impact was transformative. Younger players who had been hesitant to speak out now had role models. Veterans who had previously stayed quiet began questioning whether their silence had truly offered protection. The spark of courage spread, igniting conversations that could not easily be contained. By standing together, Cunningham and Hall transformed the controversy from an isolated scandal into a movement. The league could no longer treat this as a minor incident. The treatment of one player was now a reflection of its relationship with all athletes. The message was crystal clear. Players have power, voices matter, and the era of unquestioned authority is over. While the league attempted to quietly navigate its internal mess, another force began asserting itself: the fans. Social media exploded, arenas buzzed with whispers, and comment sections across sports websites became battlegrounds. Ticket holders who had spent hundreds of dollars to see Caitlin Clark play demanded answers. Sponsors began asking uncomfortable questions, wondering why the league would sideline its top asset at the very moment she was driving unprecedented attention. This wasn't mere frustration, it was a tidal wave of accountability, and the league could not ignore it. Every highlight clip of Clark's dominance served as a reminder of what the WNBA was suppressing. Every Instagram story showing packed arenas during games she did not play became a visual indictment. Attendance numbers, merchandise sales, TV ratings, all heavily influenced by Clark, were undermined by the league's opacity. Fans are not passive consumers, they are participants in the sports culture. By benching Clark without explanation, the league risked alienating a generation of supporters who had invested emotionally, financially, and socially. Parents bringing their kids to games, casual viewers tuning in for highlight reels, hardcore fans planning entire road trips all confronted a stark message. Politics was taking precedence over performance. The public pressure amplified media scrutiny. Analysts dissected every stat, every lineup change, every social media post, highlighting the widening rift between players and management. The WNBA, once confident in controlling the narrative, found itself on the defensive. Every moment of evasion only added fuel to the fire, escalating a minor controversy into a national conversation. Ultimately, fan outrage transformed the situation. What began as the benching of a rookie superstar evolved into a discussion about fairness, empowerment, and accountability. The narrative was tilting in Clark's favor, showing the world that when fans rally behind a player, they become a force no league can ignore. The lesson was clear. Ignoring the audience's voice is a risk leagues cannot afford, especially when that voice is united behind its brightest star. And now, the crisis reaches its most alarming point. Whispers that Caitlin Clark might walk away from the WNBA entirely. This isn't speculation from idle fans. Insiders suggest that the league's mishandling of its brightest star has pushed her to consider leaving. If Clark were to resign, it wouldn't merely be a headline, it would be a catastrophic blow to a league built around star-driven growth. Clark's influence is unmatched. Her games aren't just basketball contests, they're marquee events. Sellout crowds, record-breaking attendance, viral highlight reels, skyrocketing merchandise sales, and sponsorship deals, all of these are directly linked to her presence. Losing her wouldn't just remove a player from the court, it would drain the league of the momentum and energy it depends on for survival and growth. Why would she even consider leaving? The reasons are glaring. From being celebrated as the face of the league to being inexplicably sidelined, Clark has been treated as a problem rather than an asset. Her frustration and humiliation are compounded by a lack of transparency, leaving her options open to more lucrative, respectful opportunities abroad. Overseas leagues offering superstar treatment and substantial financial incentives are undoubtedly monitoring this situation closely. Sponsors and partners, too, would likely follow her wherever she goes. The financial stakes for the WNBA are staggering. Losing Clark mid-season doesn't just impact ticket sales, it sends shockwaves through TV contracts, merchandise revenue, and sponsorship deals. It undermines fan trust, damages the league's reputation, and complicates efforts to attract the next generation of stars. Clark's potential exit transforms this from a player dispute into a crisis with existential implications. Every analyst, commentator, and executive watching knows the severity of the situation. The clock is ticking, and if the WNBA cannot reconcile with its most valuable asset, no amount of PR, spin, or press release will fill the void. This is no longer speculation, it's a tangible threat that underscores the high cost of mismanaging talent and ignoring the voices of the league's brightest stars. Finally, we arrive at the big picture. What started as Caitlin Clark's benching has evolved into a seismic shakeup in the WNBA's power structure. For years, the league relied on top-down control, politics, and silent compliance. But now, players are leading a movement that refuses to be ignored. Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, and a growing number of rising voices are signaling that the era of unquestioned authority is over. This moment is unprecedented. For decades, athletes were told to stay quiet, play their roles, and prioritize the league's image over their own voices. Speaking out was often treated as career suicide. Yet now, we see a collective awakening. This isn't a single protest, it's a cultural revolution. Players are demanding transparency, fairness, and recognition for both talent and leadership, not just obedience. The ripple effects are immediate and far-reaching. Locker rooms buzz with conversations previously suppressed. Cross-team alliances are forming. Players are questioning not just decisions about minutes or rotations, but the very structural policies that allowed Clark to be sidelined without explanation. Fans are no longer passive observers, they are active participants, pressuring executives, supporting player voices, and refusing to accept hollow statements. Sponsors and media outlets are watching closely, realizing that the league's credibility depends on how it treats its athletes. The WNBA miscalculated if it thought this could be contained. The movement transcends Clark, Cunningham, and Hull. It's about creating a league that reflects the voices of the athletes who make it compelling. When talent is silenced, the system loses legitimacy. When players unite, the balance of power shifts. Clark's situation became a symbol. The message is clear: you can silence one voice, but you cannot silence a chorus. For the league, the rules have changed. The foundation of authority is shaking beneath executives who once thought they controlled the narrative. And for fans, players, and the sport itself, this marks the dawn of a new era, a player-driven era where influence is shared, voices matter, and the future of the game is truly in the hands of those who make it worth watching. As we arrive at the final chapter of this unfolding saga, the stakes for the WNBA could not be higher. What began as the benching of a single rookie superstar has snowballed into a league-wide reckoning. The controversies surrounding Caitlin Clark, amplified by the courageous voices of Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull, have exposed systemic flaws, fractured locker rooms, and ignited a fan-driven movement demanding accountability. The question now is simple: will the WNBA adapt, or will it crumble under its own mismanagement? The consequences of inaction are staggering. If the league fails to address the concerns raised by players and fans, it risks alienating its most valuable assets, the stars who draw crowds, boost TV ratings, and sell merchandise. Clark's potential departure is a ticking time bomb. Beyond the immediate financial impact, it would tarnish the league's reputation, weaken its negotiating power with sponsors, and signal to future talent that the WNBA is not a place where exceptional athletes are celebrated or protected. The ripple effects could resonate for years, but the situation also presents a transformative opportunity. This controversy has sparked conversations that were long overdue about fairness, transparency, and the value of player voices. The league has a chance to pivot, to rebuild trust, and to show that it prioritizes both talent and integrity. By actively supporting Clark, embracing Cunningham and Hull's leadership, and fostering an environment where players are empowered rather than silenced, the WNBA can redefine itself for a new generation of athletes and fans. Every stakeholder, executives, coaches, sponsors, media, and fans now holds a role in shaping the league's future. The WNBA can no longer operate behind closed doors. Every decision is under scrutiny. Fans will continue to watch, speak out, and hold the league accountable. Players are realizing their collective power, and the boardroom must recognize that ignoring or undermining this new reality is not an option. In the end, the saga of Caitlin Clark is more than a player controversy. It is a mirror reflecting the league's priorities, revealing both its failures and its potential. The WNBA stands at a crossroads: continue down a path of mismanagement and risk losing its brightest stars, or seize the moment to embrace transparency, celebrate talent, and empower the very athletes who make the league worth watching. The choice will define the future of women's basketball, and history will remember it, not for the games played, but for how the league treated its heroes when they mattered most. Get line SEL.